I wish to state categorically that this church has nothing whatever to do with those practicing polygamy. They are not members of this church. Most of them have never been members. They are in violation of the civil law. They know they are in violation of the law. They are subject to its penalties. The church, of course, has no jurisdiction whatever in this matter. If any of our members are found to be practicing plural marriage, they're excommunicated, the most serious penalty the church can impose. There is no such thing as a Mormon fundamentalist. It is a contradiction to use the two words together. More than a century ago, God clearly revealed unto his prophet Wilford Woodruff that the practice of plural marriage should be discontinued, which means that it is now against the law.
I refused to fall into that, and I chose my own husband, and married and had a very loving relationship for 15 years, and until I lost him through this blood atonement process.
Blood atonement teaches that there are some sins that God cannot forgive by the works of Calvary, and therefore the sinner must have his own blood spilled. This blasphemous doctrine not only diminishes the power and the purpose of Christ's blood, but glorifies the atoning power of the blood of the Mormon sinner. While steadfastly observed by Mormon fundamentalists, this anti-Christian principle originated with Joseph Smith and was furthered by later Mormon prophets. This troublesome doctrine of blood atonement blemishes the wholesome public image required by Mormonism's leaders. Today, the brethren in Salt Lake City still grapple over the predicament they find themselves in when having to both affirm and deny blood atonement. For example, the late Mormon apostle Bruce R. McConkie, in his book Mormon Doctrine, denied that the church ever practiced or taught blood atonement. Yet on the same page, stated that because the blood of Christ is not sufficient to forgive certain sins, the Mormon God requires man to have his own blood spilled.
On the 27th of June, we were carrying on our life as usual, and happened to be the 144th anniversary of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith. My half-brothers came into our office and murdered my husband. At the same time, there were 3 other consecutive deaths going on. My brother-in-law, Dwayne, and his 8-year-old daughter, Jenny, was with him, and they also killed her. Our names were on the list of to be atoned for. My father believed that we were traitors to God's cause and that our blood must be shed to atone for the sin of turning against light and knowledge, as he supposed.
Blood atonement is if you have charity enough for someone to save them, the shedding of their blood is the only way that they can atone for certain sins.
People really thought they were doing a favor in my great-grandfather's day to shed the blood, save their soul, and it's still taking place today. My great-grandfather John D. Lee was one of the Mormon men who were called avenging angels, or destroying angels. It was their duty, their obligation, to cut the throats, shed the blood of people who were apostate Mormons, who were guilty of speaking against the authorities.
Jesus shed his blood that as an infinite sacrifice, but there are some sins that the blood of Jesus cannot atone for, and therefore it requires the shedding of that man's blood to atone.
For adultery, for apostasy, for marriage to a Negro, for not receiving the gospel, for lying, for any of the other offenses, they'd have to have their own blood shed to have forgiveness of sin.
To put it simply, my father's beliefs stem directly from Mormonism. Not one thing is different than what the early Mormon doctrine is.
The original doctrine that Joseph Smith and Brigham Young taught is exactly what I believe. I'm now at present baptizing people, and I have 5 apostles now, and we're out teaching and preaching the gospel, trying to get the Mormons into the original doctrine that Brigham and Joseph had it set on. And I refuse to give it up. I've been cast out of the Mormon church because of it.
That's the reason why today people are still killing each other, shedding the blood so they can have forgiveness of sin. And it comes directly from Joseph Smith and from Brigham Young.
There's been 27 murders since 1972. My uncle, my sister, my brother Arthur, my brother committed suicide, which is a direct consequence of all of this. I would just like you to know that if anything happens to me, ever, or to my children, I will personally, I believe the Mormon Church in general will be responsible, because the very doctrine of blood atonement stems from Mormonism.
She had been my friend for a long time, and I actually knew that she liked my husband before we were married, had something for him. And so we had talked about living plural marriage. We both, agreed in the principle and everything. And so we kind of decided to do it while we were young rather than wait several years. Ideally, the husband and wife agree on having another woman enter their family, because it really is an important step, and you want to all be unified in it. And so it was a joint process. We all kind of went out to dinner, and we went out a few times all together, and then after that I was just like, you guys go out. I trusted Abe and knew that he was a moral man and would be respectful and everything, and so I'm like, you guys go ahead and go out. I know that you're going to have to get to know each other, on a personal level and stuff, so that wasn't a problem for me. And so eventually led to engagement and marriage. I bet everyone else in this restaurant doesn't realize that they're sitting in a restaurant that has, 3 tables of polygamous families. You can't tell. We all look the same.
And in 1999, I represented one of these runaway polygamous wives. And believe me, she was running for her life when she found me. She was from the Fred Collier clan. It's a very nasty group, very much like this Jeff's clan that we see now. And she was telling me that if she was caught, she and the children, that they would be killed because of a doctrine that they believe in called blood atonement. Now for Christians, it sounds something like Jesus died for our sins and gave his blood to atone for ours. Well, that's not what these people believe. They believe that there are some sins that are so awful that your blood needs to be spilled. And what are these sins? What are these things that are so unforgivable? Well, breaking a covenant marriage is one, running away, being disobedient to your husband, because the man is looked at as a god in the family, and so you have to be absolutely obedient to him. Well, she knew of situations and women in her own clan, in the Collier clan, who had been killed for doing what she had done. And I believed every word she said. But it wasn't until all this stuff started happening that I Googled polygamous cults, child abuse, that I found a report that was from the Attorney General's office of Arizona and Utah about child abuse in polygamous societies. And every single thing she told me and more is all laid out in this report. It's proof from the government that they know what's going on in these groups. And the media hasn't said a word. Have you heard one word about blood atonement? About women and girls running away and being caught and killed? Have you heard about the Adam God doctrine and their justification for why it's just fine to have incest with your children? Check this out. You know what the rationale for that one is? That Eve was from the rib of Adam, sort of like Adam is the father. And Adam had sex with Eve, therefore that's incest is fine. Mary had Jesus by having some sort of odd sex with God. Mary is God's daughter, therefore incest is fine. These people are sick. The stories that my client told me were horrifying. I mean, it was just amazing that things like this are going on in the United States. Her father-in-law, Fred Collier, raped her in Mexico when she was there. And her husband had 5 wives, 22 children, parked in all different places in the Southwest, and he didn't support any of them. Now, this is a very honorable doctrine. It's called bleeding the beast. When the children and women are on welfare, bleeding the beast is justified for not supporting your children. So our tax money is paying for all kinds of craziness because these people want to hurt the American government and think that being on welfare is honorable. So when I'm watching these news stories where they're spinning this as some sort of religious freedom issue, and the government is taking children away from these poor women who look like something from Little House on the Prairie, nothing could be further from the truth. Just take a look at the women. It's so interesting. None of their eyes are red and puffy. If somebody took your children away, wouldn't you be hysterical? I mean, wouldn't you just be crying so much that your eyes would be shut from being, rubbed and crying? That's what most people look like when something horrible like that has happened to them. And yet, no, these women are such automatons. They don't love their children. How could somebody possibly love their children and trade your 12-year-old daughter for somebody else's 12-year-old daughter to make your pedophile husband happy? That's not love. We need to protect these children by getting word to the media about this report. It's obvious to me by the questions that are being asked that they don't have a clue about the background of what's really going on in these cults. If you know of anybody in the media who can possibly run a story about this and give some facts or interview the people and ask them about blood atonement, ask them. Say, do you believe in blood atonement? I don't know that they could lie about something that supposedly is so important to them. I mean, they might, but, ask them what it is. What are some of the unforgivable sins? What's going through these people's minds that they would allow children to be in a situation where they're traded like playing cards when they're little kids? And I'm sure that you've heard by now about all the boys that are kicked out, because there are some wives that are more in higher esteem than other wives. Well, the wives of low esteem, when they have boys, they kick out these kids at 14 and 15 years old, just kick them out to be on their own, because there's too many men and not enough women, because you've got the upper echelon having, 5, 6, 7, 8, 20 wives, and they can't stand the competition of having these little boys around. So the boys aren't safe and the girls aren't safe. We need to get the word to the media to at least take a look at this report. All they have to do is Google Attorney General, Arizona and Utah, polygamous child abuse. I mean, I found it. Why can't they? So let's help get the word out and protect these children. I am so scared that they're going to be sent back to these crazy people. Anyway, let's do what we can. Thanks.
When something needs to be done, we know how to do it.
So you're also, again, the victim of your own success?
When the leadership of the church asks us to do something, we get it done.
And what the leadership wants now, they say, the reason why they brought us here to this temple, is to be less timid about defending the faith. For Nightline, this is Dan Harris in Draper, Utah.